Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or should I say welcome back to the Evolving Woman series. This is Make an Impression. My name is Jane. I help shy women overcome their fear through faith and bold action. And today we are going to be featuring the woman Esther. So we know Esther in the Bible as the queen. We know her as the one who found favor in the eyes of the king. But today I want us to look at Esther as the Jewish woman, the woman who grew up in a Jew culture, who was actually, let's say, probably not meant to end up in the kingdom. That is the woman I want us to look at because in this Evolving Woman series we are focusing on women who are evolving, but they feel like their evolving is in the downward trajectory and not in the upward trajectory. Now, when I look at Esther as the Jewish woman, I'm able to identify with her just as I am as a woman where I'm seated, because I stop looking at her as the royal queen who was seated at the highest throne in the kingdom, but I look at her and identify with her as just a normal woman, a normal girl who grew up as a Jewish girl, who was raised by an uncle. And, she was just living a normal life before she became Queen Esther. And when I look at the situation of the Jewish woman that she was, and then I look at Queen Esther, I see how God can quickly turn your situation around, and not so that you can just be a queen who's going to be admired and loved by many, but just so that at such a time as this, that you will be put in a place where you can make a difference. So let's look at Esther as the Jewish woman. So first things first, Esther was not even supposed to end up in the kingdom. She was not supposed to end up in the line of the women who would now be chosen after the king decided to get rid of Queen Vashti. But she ended up in that line, and she ended up being grouped, and she ended up earning favor with the king and becoming the queen. But even as she was a queen, remember, she was hiding her identity as the Jewish woman because that was forbidden in that culture. And I want us to look at Esther as a woman who, when she got into the position of power, she did not forget her identity as the Jewish woman. She did not forget where she came from. She did not forget who she was. She did not forget the virtues which she was raised with when she was living with Mordecai. And I want us to look at those characters, those traits that we would say probably identify her as an evolving woman, and not an evolving woman who started at the top, but an evolving woman who started at the bottom, or who probably never even thought she would end up being a queen, but she finds herself in this situation where she now has to do things contrary to what was normal, contrary to what was considered okay, contrary to what was basically acceptable in that period or in that time that she was in existence. And I'm giving you guys examples of these women because last week we talked about Deborah. Now we are talking about Esther. I want you to see that when we talk about an evolving woman, even for God, he was not calling women who are qualified. He was not calling women who are special. He was not calling women who were raised a certain way. He was calling women who were obedient. He was calling women who had faith. He was calling women who believed in who he was. And that's all that mattered. So I want you, in the situation you're in, to not look at your circumstances, to not look at your environment, but to look at yourself as a woman whom God has called in the position where you're in. Now, when we look at Esther, we see that she reached, when it came to a point where now she had to go to the king and tell him that one of his soldiers wanted to kill the Jews. She found herself in a what I like to call a catch-22 situation, because now she had to choose: does she retain her royalty as the queen, or does she decide to give it all up so that she can save her people? And what did Esther decide to do? She decided to go and fight this battle in prayer. And I always tell you guys, as women, our best place to fight our battles is on our feet and in our secret place with God, because there's communications and there's conversations that you can have with God that you cannot go out there fighting. Now imagine Esther would have decided to go out there and fight and not seek God's counsel or seek God's wisdom or seek God's guidance. We probably don't know what could have happened. But what I pick from Esther is that there is importance in going into the throne of God with humility and reverence and finding solutions from God, not from people, not from the norm, not from what people think should be done, or not from conversations that you think should happen, but from God, where God can sit you down and tell you, this is the direction I want you to take. So that's what I pick from Esther. I also pick a level of selflessness that Esther had, that as a woman I would really love to have, not to a point where she put herself in suffering, but to a point where she decided, if she's going to die, then let her die saving her people. So I see selflessness, in the sense that she was a queen. She could have decided to save her life and say, well, I left the Jewish community. You guys, if it goes bad for you, shaurienu mimi, I'm safe, But even in her throne, when she was sitting in her throne, she did not forget who she was, and she did not forget her principles or the values that had been input in her when she was growing up. And that's how she said, if I die, I die, but I will go before the king and I will let him know of what is happening. Now, when I look at Esther, I also see a woman of wisdom. I see a woman who, makes moves in a calculated way. She's not just callous. She's not just using her powers anyhowly, When she was able to find favor in the king's sight, and she invited him for dinner, she didn't do it the first night. She said, let me use this first night to lure my husband, to prepare the space, to prepare the environment, to prepare, a safe space where I can be able to communicate what it is that I want to communicate. So she did not just go with the first dinner. She went ahead and organized a second one. And when she felt that it was okay, when she felt that the environment was right for her to tell the king that one of his kingsmen wants to destroy the Jewish community, she was able to do that. So from Esther, I learned that there's importance in wisdom. There's some importance in us as women seeking wisdom, in us as women walking in a path that is not walked by many, because that has never been heard of. Nobody in that time or state or in that place that, or we can just say during that historical time, would summon the king as a woman. But here we see Esther, a simple Jewish woman who became a queen, summoning the king and being able to get his attention. So sometimes all we need is just the backing of God. And how do we get the backing of God? We do that through prayer, through our commitment, through our obedience. Because when I look at these women that we are discussing in this Evolving Woman series, I see similarities. I see women of faith. I see women who understood what it meant to have a relationship with God. I see women who were applying wisdom in the spaces they're in. Some were judges, some were queens, some were so many other things. They were housewives, they were all these people. They were even prostitutes. I think the next one that we're going to be discussing, we're going to be talking about a prostitute. They were normal women with normal lives just like you and me. But what made them extraordinary is because they chose to walk in obedience, so that their faith was not just in their hearts, but they chose to activate it through bold action. I always talk about bold action, through bold action, so that they are not just saying, I'm a woman of faith, but they are actively pursuing what that means in the spaces they are in. They are actively pursuing what that means for the change that they need to make. And that's why I like the book of Esther, because they say, but for who knows, when Mordecai tells her, for who knows that at such a time as this, that you have been placed in the throne to save your people. So for who knows, for at such a time as this, you have been placed where you are so that you can make a difference, so that you can I don't know how to explain it to you guys, so that you can activate your faith through bold action and make that change where you are, and allow God to use you to make the change that He wants to make for where He has placed you. At that point, it's not going to be easy, because I can imagine probably Esther at some point was hesitant. She was like, I'm going to lose my throne. I'm going to lose all this authority, all this life that I am used to. I'm used to being beautified. I'm used to being treated well. I'm used to, she was used to a certain kind of lifestyle. And now she had to put that in the line to save the Jewish community. So you might be used to a certain level of thing. You might be used to something, but God is saying, I need you to withdraw that. I need you to stop looking at that. I need you to trust me for better. And that's how Mordecai ended up being I think one of the best kinsmen of the king, and that's how Queen Esther still remained to be a queen. So you never know what lies on the other side. But unless you choose to activate your faith through bold action, I pray that God helps me where I am in the spaces that He has called me, that I will not only sit there and be comfortable, get in the comfort of, but I don't want to let go of this comfort. I don't want to let go of this thing that you have given me. But when I am faced with a catch-22 situation, I will remember the victory belongs to God, and I will remember that there could be a reason God has put me here, has put me in this state where He has put me, so that His glory can be seen, so that things can go His way, so that His word can come to pass. That's it for today's conversation. That's it for today's learnings on the Evolving Woman series. We have featured the woman called Esther, not as the queen, but as the Jewish girl that we see and we know growing up, because that is the woman we can identify with. That is the woman who probably her evolvement looked like it was going in the downward trajectory, but we see it turning and taking the upward trajectory. That's it for today's conversation. My name is Jane. Welcome to Make an Impression, where I help shy women overcome their fear through faith and bold action. Until the next one, bye.